afternoon, evening. Hello, everyone, to another episode of the RHMax show. I'm Max, your host, the RHMaximalist, where we talk about a lot of different things going on in the Richard Heart ecosystem. Today is going to be a stream with CryptoSloth. We've interviewed CryptoSloth before a few weeks ago, and he's got a ton of knowledge about a lot of different things, especially different projects in the ecosystem. So let's just bring him in. Let's get started. Welcome, Sloth.
Hey, what's up, Max? Good to be back, man.
Yeah. I know you've made arrangements today to be healthy, wealthy, and wise in the stream. So I appreciate you taking that time out of your very busy day. As I'm privy to your schedule, you've made me aware, and we can make this happen.
Yeah, no problem, man. Always happy to come on and chat with you at the end of my day. It's a great way to finish it out.
Was it getting you the HEX vision info you needed? Was that the thing? You're like, gotta show up today. The CSV was that important.
Yep, you bailed me out, man. I don't know why I can't. I tried both on my desktop and my laptop, and for some reason, CSVs are not downloading on any of my computers. It's really weird. I want to do some. I'm gonna do some like analysis with like all the different stakes in regards to like how much Hedron is actually like be able to be minted with all these large wallets. I just kind of want to run the numbers because I have an intuitive sense of what's going on, which is kind of counter to the mainstream, to the main narrative going around that it's just like this hyperinflationary coin. But before I start making too many arguments, I kind of want the math behind it, just so I know my intuition is correct.
Yeah, dude, that's the kind of data we want. We want people running analysis on all the different streams of information. He's talking about hex.vision has a ton of data that you can do different searches, different queries in Cabana and pull down information. For some reason, it was hard for me. It took me a few tries too. I actually had to I could not download the CSV when I tried to do it with the obvious way. After I found the ... that actually showed me how to do it in that particular part of the screen, it wouldn't download. So then I went to the search feature, and then I didn't run a query. I just left all the values the same, and I finally got to download the CSV. So glad we get you that data. Again, it's awesome to have people in the community like trying to run these numbers and trying to figure out the different angles of fundamentals and testing theories and all that stuff. So let's get into it, man.
Let's do it.
Let's get into it. So I want to talk about a few different projects. I know we talked about Hedron, Maxi, PulseDogeCoin, all that stuff. But I wanted to say too, one of the things that I think one of the reasons that people create new projects, because for example, why would you create a new project? If you love HEX, you love PulseChain, all this stuff. Why would you create another project? Like, why wouldn't you put all of your love, all of your heart, soul, and energy into those? And I think it comes down to a few different things. New ideas. So there are some very creative people in the community, and it takes a very creative mind to buy into, the Richard Heart ecosystem. You have to, especially if you're only been in it a year or two, you're going to have to look past the fashion shows, all the stuff, all the shenanigans that go on, all the outrage marketing, all that stuff. Especially if you haven't been early, you got to look past a lot of that stuff and get into the nitty gritty of what he's talking about. So we have those type of people in the community, and they have a new idea and they want to try it out. I think that's one reason. Another is they see a way to add value by solving some sort of problem or just creating something that just has some kind of confluence, has some kind of complementary effect to the ecosystem. For example, Maximus. You're doing a derivative play on the future value of HEX, and you're creating a way to monetize that. It's funny because people say HEX is like how you monetize the value of time, right? It's like the proof of weight instead of proof of stake or proof of work. And then with Maximus, it's like we're monetizing the 5555 stake basically, and that type of thing. So I think it kind of falls into the creative aspect too, but also a value add in the ecosystem. And the third reason is they want to keep compounding their chances of 10,000x. I think, obviously with the numbers, it's harder for HEX to do a 10,000x from where it is today, even though it's significantly down from its all-time high, than it would be from a new project that has all these other fundamentals built in too. Now, I still believe HEX will do another 10,000x, but it'll be on a longer time scale than 18 months, I do believe. And obviously with the market cap and all the other metrics you can look at, it's just harder to do in general. So I think people are looking for the next 10,000x. And if they're looking, why not keep it in the Richard ecosystem? Why not have the HEX, have the PulseChain? You know, I kind of think that even Richard talked about this before. HEX being like buying HEX is like getting into Bitcoin when it first came out. And I like to think of that. I can have this vision of the ecosystem being HEX is Bitcoin. Eventually, it'll be that, you know, that trusted long-term store value, for example, depending on which way you subscribe. Let's just say it that way for this example. And then PulseChain could be that Ethereum, and then PulseX, obviously Uniswap. And then, you know, we have replacements for all the other traditional cryptos, Litecoin, Dogecoin. You know, it used to be Augur. I don't know if it still exists. The rep coin, where they did the bets. You could do like decentralized betting and stuff like that. Not sure if that still exists, but it was very popular back then, especially 2016, 2017, 2018 time period. Those can be replaced with Hedron, Maxi, you know, all these different projects like that. So I think that those are the three reasons. I think people, you know, they love HEX, they love PulseChain, but there's so many good ideas and so many value adds and so many different ways to get another 10,000x that, I mean, you got to be tempted to look for it, go for it.
Yeah, man. No, I agree. I think that's a good synopsis of kind of where we're at in the ecosystem as a whole. And I mean, like, you know, we can't rely on Richard for everything to create all of the awesome crypto projects. You know, he's instilled an ethos into his community, you know, decentralized admin keyless, immutable smart contracts. And now the original, well, I think we're really seeing the people who are building on top of the HEX ecosystem. A lot of them are like day one or day zero OGs. And they've been kind of inoculated with these principles from the early days, seen the monetary rewards of it. And then it's been kind of soaking in their subconscious for like, you know, almost 3 years now. And now we're starting to see the fruits of those mental processes coming to fruition through these derivative products, through different platforms, you know, like Mintra, Liquid Loans. They're building with these same principles. And so now we're kind of getting, you know, if HEX was Gen 0, the thing that birthed it all, you know, we're seeing Gen 1 of the true crypto first principles starting to manifest. And we have the perfect playground with PulseChain to do these things, where we're not inhibited by gas fees, where we can create, be creative and expand to our heart's desire without having to worry about paying middlemen, paying miners an absorbent amount of money just to operate.
As soon as you said that, just reminded me of how Richard says it, sucking middleman D. He likes to repeat that phrase a lot, so that's what you reminded me of on the outro there. Yeah, very true, man. Cool. Yeah, I just wanted to. I don't think a lot of people kind of give that analysis and walk through why. You know, they don't even think about like see shiny object syndrome, right? I don't care why. New thing, I'm interested, or new thing, I'm not interested at all. But if you really like look at the broader picture and see like why these may be to your advantage and why they may not be, yeah, those are the things I can think of. So then it's I can't think of a better ecosystem to be in. You want to be in the one. If you're interested in cool projects, you know, get it, you know, make it wealth, wisdom, happiness, all this stuff. Richard Heart ecosystem. I don't know of any better one. And that's what I like about PulseChain is it's making it even more tight knit. It's bringing more people in and keeping them in because the shiny objects are within the ecosystem instead of going out, trying to learn another community, trying to change your allegiances, all that stuff. I think this community is the one to be in.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm with you.
So Hedron, let's start with that. What is the bullish and bearish case for Hedron?
Bullish case, you could boil it down to its token distribution model is tied to the share rate, particularly B shares. So as B shares or just shares get exponentially more difficult to obtain as the share rate increases, as well as the trend of price goes up. And with those two together being force multipliers, new people entering the system, it'll be much more difficult for them to obtain Hedron. So that's one. I mean, there will be a time, just like, T-shares were 67 cents at one point, and now at a 90% correction, or 85-90% correction, it still costs over $500 if you leverage 15 years of your time to get one. And so we're just going to see that exact same process repeat, just at the B share level instead of the T share level. And so eventually people will only be able to mint less than one Hedron a day, based on their stakes, what they can afford. And then, in addition to that, you have some burning mechanics. And the main burning mechanic is through the liquidation auctions, where people, when there's a defaulted HSI stake, people bid on it, and then that Hedron is burned, gone forever, and then people get that person who wins gets the stake, as well as whenever people pay off their make their payments, their premium. Sorry, their principal plus their premium. That premium is extra Hedron that has to get bought off the market, which is also burnt. So the advanced feature, both from people who pay their loans off and in the allotted parameters, as well as through the liquidations, Hedron gets burnt. So if you pair the burning mechanism with the asymptotic nature of the supply trending towards zero, that just creates an environment where the token becomes extremely scarce. Now the bear and then so that's like two things mixed together, and then people will presumably be buying Hedron off the market in order to bid on these liquidation auctions for the arbitrage opportunity there. If you can get this Hedron off the market cheaper, then if you can get the stake by buying Hedron off the market cheaper than you could by buying HEX off the market and staking it, that is where economic mass is going to go. So those are kind of the bare basic bullish cases. I think it goes more in depth, but I have to work that out a little bit more myself. The bearish case, and if you'll notice, most of the bullish case has to do on the supply side of the supply dynamic paradigm, a supply demand paradigm of price, and most of the bearish case is it surrounds the demand. So right now, well, a little bit of the supply, but also the demand. So first, the supply part of the bearish argument is that there is a lot of Hedron going to a very small amount of people. And that's kind of the flip side of what I just said for the bullish case. So the people with thousands and thousands of T shares, they're able to mint just billions and billions of Hedron ad nauseum for 15 years, or however long their staking ladder lasts. And then that's compounded with the launch bonus, where most of them got anywhere between a 7 to 10x. I'm sure a lot of them got a 10x. So you have a small centralized group of people with a lot of the coins, and they're able to just market dump on people's heads anytime there's any momentum in price. And then a lot of the system depends on the HSIs and the advanced function being utilized. And so if these people are market dumping and suppressing the price for such a long period of time, and this liquidation auction never really gets off the ground and running, then you get into the situation where that burning isn't happening, and the system isn't allowed to work as intended. And so people are just dumping without any actual demand being introduced into the system. So it just becomes a permanent dump token. So those are basically, from what I've seen in the community, those are kind of the pros and cons of Hedron, of what people are arguing about it.
So wasn't there, I know there's some back and forth between HEX Info, the PulseDogeCoin creator, and I assume Alex from Hedron, because it's using the Hedron account today. Other than the Merkle Tree deal that got solved today, that was interesting. There was some refuting of why people would dump Hedron forever. Was a workaround produced for that? Was it what do you remember? What exactly what was the workaround for it not getting dumped, or the case for why that wouldn't be a problem?
The case for why it wouldn't be a problem. Basically, the idea that Alex was saying was that these people who get all these Hedron, one, they're in a very privileged position because they're actually the only people who will ever have this absorbent amount of Hedron, and it's not going to be around forever. So a lot of your skull cap.
I talked to Matt before, and he's making a joke. He knows it's a hat. He knows it's a hat now.
see, where was I going with that? And so if you look at the stakes that a lot of these larger players have, they have ladders, they have stakes coming out every year. Well, once each of these stakes expire, they lose their 10x bonus or whatever launch bonus that they have whenever they restake. So immediately their dumping power is decreased by a factor of like 11 or 10, or whatever launch bonus that they have. So as time goes on, those perpetual dumpers will have less Hedron over time. He also brought up the let's see, the liquidation argument, and then let me see. I have some of his arguments pinned in my thing. Let me see if I can look at them.
It's a really great
misrepresent
thread.
them.
Yeah. If you can post that, post a link to that thread as well, if you got it out.
Let's see. Yeah. So, and then another thing is that a lot of the initial. Oh, this was the other one. So if you look at how much they're able to like produce every month or so, it's like between like maybe 15 and 30 billion, which is a significant amount for individual players. But he was saying that they're doing about 800 billion in volume every day in trading volume. So the amount that these guys have in relation to the volume of the system, which because it's early is pretty low, is actually not super significant. Mathematically.
That was that was the one I saw that I couldn't quite remember.
And then you also have to remember these people are in really privileged positions because they're not just getting this Hedron for free. Like, I mean, they didn't have to put any money into the market to get it, but like they had to buy HEX. They had to take on a lot of risk getting HEX and staking it early in the early days. Like, there's a lot of risk associated with that. So in some ways, with Alex's goal of creating was wanting to create a tokenized derivative of a share, in a way they kind of earned their position that they're in. But the flip side of that is that nobody will ever be able to get their position within the Hedron system ever again, unless they just have an absorbent amount of economic mass to put in. And even if that's the case, like how many people actually will be able to do that? So really I think this situation falls into the classic Richard Heart quote of, the best time to buy is when there's the most centralization and there's the most inflation. I think that's where the Hedron system is at currently, because these people, kind of in a way that we are really happy when people dump HEX because it gives us a chance to get more shares, because these tokens are tied to the shares and they are just as rare as shares to a degree. There is a bit of a privilege when they dump, because that allows us to accumulate these coins that we just have no other option of accumulating simply by participating in the system. And the argument against what I'm about to say is the timeline, but they can't do that forever. 15 years ends eventually. And yeah, that's a long time to hold a token that may or may not do well, like for sure. But from a strict and real perspective, these people won't be around forever. There will be a time where there will no longer be people who can perpetually dump Hedron at the same rate as they're doing now. So the question is, do you think the system has any value? And do you want to take this opportunity where people who may not understand the value of the system are dumping their coins that they earned through taking an exorbitant amount of risk when there was an exorbitant amount of FUD, staking it for a long time, abstaining a large part of those T-shares, not valuing the derivative token, and dunking it on the market? And that's a question that each person has to answer personally. My answer to that is yes. I am trying to increase my relative position in the Hedron system because I believe it has a lot of value.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people that are dumping now, I think they're going to buy it back at a higher price. I think that's what they think too. It's not that they don't like Hedron or think it's worthless. I think that they see the value in Hedron and they're looking in the future to know, because they know it's going to go up in value over time. But they believe, that's why I think they believe, that in the short term, in the next year or two maybe, it's just not going to, there's going to be a good deal on it, essentially. Yeah. And they want to get out of it and really wait till it goes down. And I believe that's their strategy. It's not that they hate Hedron, it's that they literally think that it's not the best time to buy it.
Yeah. And that's opportunity for people like me who aren't in that privileged position of having a ton of T-shares where I can just mint a bunch of Hedron. so I get to get a position, and I get to hold that for a long period of time. There's one more thing I was going to say. Crypto Kool-Aid, he had a really good analogy of what Hedron is when he was on a stream with Hod Pearl and some Australian female streamers. He said basically like Hedron is like a shadow of the share system, and there's going to be a time where it hits this threshold where it just takes off. Whether it's in 2 to 3 years, 15 years, whatever, there is going to be a moment where it hits some threshold and it takes off. And you better be on the ride when that happens. Because if not, just like with the T-share rate getting away from you, your ability to accumulate Hedron is also going to get exactly as difficult to obtain.
Yeah, I think, again, the best way I've heard it described from HexTech16, I've quoted him a couple of times, Hedron is ahead of its time. It will have its time. I truly believe that. I think initially it'll just be, as you've seen what's been happening, it's just been dumped like crazy. But hey, we're in a bear market too. I mean, everything's dumping. It just seems like Hedron's the one that just gets a little. You never like see hope with it in the last few weeks. It's just like, nope, just gonna keep kicking it. I think Hedron will have its day. It's just ahead of its time.
Well, let's not forget it did like an 11 to 12x off the gate.
Yes.
Like that was a crazy time. And people didn't know, I didn't know if it was going back down after a while. Like when it had its distribution top, I was like, it could keep going. Like, I don't know. And obviously it's gone back to at the very beginning, but like, let's not forget that, it pumped hard initially out the gate.
Well, what have you done for me lately? That's the story of crypto, isn't it? It's like, right. I remember when it first came out, everyone's very excited. It just keeps going up, like you said. And then now it's just getting kicked hard. It's not fair, but like I said, it'll have its day. And when that day comes, all the Hedron holders, and maybe at that point, the whales they'll stop dumping so much because they'll see a light. They'll see a light at the end of the tunnel and say, hey, actually there's a good trend going on. And hey, now it has more value because, whatever dynamics with HEX going on, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get into distribution models too, because I think that kind of ties into Hedron and the dumping we've seen and all that. So with HEX, for example, free claim to Bitcoiners, that was like a good onboarding thing and also a way to get HEX, although it was a very small amount unless you had a ton of Bitcoin. And then other than that, you could buy it from the adoption amplifier. I believe that happened for a year. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, it happened for a year. You could buy it.
I don't know, man. You were there. I wasn't there.
I know. I know. It's, all kind of blurs.
You're asking me, man. I don't know. I came in a year ago, dude.
It kind of blurs. I think it was for a year, though. And then big payday happened and all that. But that's how you got HEX. Free claim to Bitcoiners, adoption amplifier. PulseChain, if you hold Ethereum, you're going to get a little bit of dust. You're not going to get much. And it's more of just like hey, check your wallet and just maybe enough to transact in the first few months or year or so before we assume it appreciates. And the sacrifice phase, obviously, that's no expectations, but apparently people who sacrifice, they're on a list. You're on the good list. You're not on the naughty list. You're on the good list, and the good list may be rewarded with tokens based on all these different X's and stuff. Hedron, minute with HEX stakes, right? And we talked about how that distribution model, some of the wells in HEX, if they can mint a whole lot of it, that's also an opportunity. It could be on the downside as well, at least in the beginning. Maxi, you could trade HEX for Maxi 1-for-1 during the launch phase, I guess you would call it, sacrifice phase, something like that. And then of course you can buy it on the market. And then PulseDogeCoin. This is one that I think is notable because of the distribution phase, where the whales and the turtles. So the whales are like the whales, the richer ones. The turtles are like the poorer ones, the ones that have less stakes or smaller stakes, all that stuff. And then the dolphins and squids, this is kind of like Staker app nomenclature, I guess. The dolphins and squid, the lower and the upper middle class, they get the most free claim PLST. So in that way, the theory is that you could prevent a lot of the dumping that come from whales who are taking profit or for whatever reason. And then people who are, maybe less interested in the system or have less of a stake in it, the turtles, they they would get less to dump because maybe, I don't know, I feel like we're doing like a philosophical, like what do poor people do with money and what do rich people do with money type of thing too. But it is an interesting economic study as well in these kinds of things. There is some overlap. Anyways, it rewards the people who may use it the most wisely in the best interest for the coin. That's the ideal. And that's what struck me as the most interesting thing about the coin. Meme coin, whatever, it's on Pulse eventually, whatever, weird website thing with the other coin, whatever. But the distribution phrase I thought was very thoughtful and a cool economic experiment. So what have you seen as far as the distribution models? What do you think is most interesting? What do you think has the most pumpamentals for the coin? Like if you were creating a new coin from today, what do you think you would use or kind of optimize for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll share my thoughts. Some thoughts I had probably a while ago about distribution models, and essentially, what a distribution model is, from implied from its name, is who do we want to give our initial set of coins to jumpstart the community or the ecosystem that we're trying to build, right? So we want to give our coins to people who will prop up and utilize our system, do positive things for it, versus people who would just dump the coins. So an example of a perpetually dumped coin from history would be like Bitcoin Cash, where they forked Bitcoin and then they just gave everybody their copy, and then people who didn't value the system just dumped it, took their, and then sold off and got their real Bitcoin or whatever. And this was a big reason why Richard has chosen to dilute the supply of Pulse by like 10,000 or like a large factor to 1, so that Ethereum whales did not have the dumping power that like the Bitcoin Cash people had. Now, another set of distribution model could be providing coins through inflation to people who provide liquidity. So you'll notice in a lot of DeFi projects, they'll have very high APRs. If you take their coin, pair it with ETH, USDC, or whatever coin, throw it into a liquidity pool, stake the LP tokens, and then you earn that token as a reward. So the people who are getting those tokens are providing a service to the system by allowing the coins to be traded. That's another traditional kind of distribution model. Now, these HEX derivatives, their distribution model is very specific to the goals that they were trying to obtain. So Hedron gets a lot of flack because it gave whales a very large supply of the very large mintability. Very large supply of the coins that were able to be minted, right?
Especially early whales.
Yes, especially if you had more T-shares, you get more Hedron. You have more T-shares for longer, you get more Hedron. If you're there the first 10 days, you got an 11x on top of all of that, right? It all kind of adds up. But you have to put that into the context of what the goal of the project was. So Alex was trying to create a tokenized derivative or a tokenized representation of a B share. Now, if you're creating a tokenized version of a B share and it needs to reflect what the system actually is, then the people who have the most in that system are just going to have the most of that coin, right? Like if and this was one of the arguments I hear against it from people were saying they shouldn't have given whales so much. They should have not blacklisted wallets. In my opinion, if Alex did this, Hedron would be a dead project because it no longer serves the purpose it was trying to come out with, right? It's just a function of the goal. Now, the launch phase bonus, the reason that was in place is because we have 2 entire years of T-shares that have existed before Hedron came into play. So like T-shares that have come into the system and then been burned away minting HEX. So in order to catch up to that, the hyperinflationary period given to the early adopters. So that was that point. Now, the next one, Maxi, the distribution model was tied to its necessity of utility because it was trying to create a ERC20 derivative of an entire stake whose value is tied to its redeemability at the very end of the stake. So in order to accumulate HEX and to serve that function, to even do the stake, you needed to give away a token that could then be redeemed at the end of the stake. So its distribution model, again, like Hedron, is directly tied to this functionality that the problem is trying to solve or the value is trying to give the community. Right. PLSD, its distribution model seems to be as a result of its personal thesis in regards to what drives price. As I think it's also a bit of a marketing thing, and this falls into a category that has to do with like marketing. So similar to like the with PulseChain, how it's the largest free airdrop ever to exist. That gets people in the door. You know, like you were saying, people come in and then they're like, oh, do I have these free coins? Maybe they're worth something, maybe they're not. But you got that first impression. You market it to people and you got that impression and people are using your system.
Yeah.
I think PLSD, its distribution model was to prove a thesis. A couple theses. One, that the opposite of unit bias is true, where you can have a low supply and a high price, and that would still allow for large price appreciation, as well as to give tokens to the middle class of a system, and seeing how that kind of distribution model works. And because it's a meme token without an explicit utility outside of onboarding new users into the PulseChain ecosystem, that seems like why it had the distribution model that it had. And I think it's perfectly fine. I'm really interested to see how that distribution model plays out over time. And it's had some success. I mean, its price has held up pretty well amongst all this downturn in the market. But yeah, that's a lot of thoughts about what distribution models are, kind of going over the different systems. Yeah.
So what do you think? So if you're up to, and it could be different goals with projects. If the goal is price go up, what do you think is the most advantageous distribution model of maybe of the ones you've discussed, or even you could think of?
Price go up.
Yeah, which distribution model has the epitome of hold me and given to the people with the best interest of the system for price go up?
Probably an adoption amplifier type of system. I think having to put skin in the game up front, and maybe even the sacrifice phase could fall into this category too. But having to put skin in the game to obtain the tokens automatically kind of shows a commitment to the system as a whole, as well as it does give the opportunity for an OA like entity to exist, because they're able to absorb a large percentage of supply and kind of act like a they're able
Guardian
to act
angel.
as exactly. They're able to provide liquidity. They're able to protect the price, etc., etc. So yeah, and then a sacrifice phase that would not allow for such an OA entity unless it was kind of baked into the token distribution percentages. But I do like an adoption amplifier type of system just because it forces participants to put skin in the game up front. Especially if you're just trying to bootstrap an entirely new token, and then without necessarily trying to create a derivative product, or if you don't want to piggyback off a community that already exists.
Yeah, and that's something that is sort of a maybe unintended side effect of having an OA in a system where there are derivative plays built on top of it. Because if you build something that where there's another project, if you're building another project on top of a project that has an OA, and part of that new project is only people who are participating actively in the system can be a part of our new system, the OA kind of, it's almost like it transfers itself, or its power grows in the ecosystem when you build it that way. And I wonder if that's something that Alex thought about, or Richard thought about too. Hey, if anyone builds on HEX, and if they do it based on these things, the OA is going to be, kind of going to spread its wings to other projects. And I wonder if Alex was like, that if the OA claims versus doesn't claim, I wonder if there's like a game theory bet going on with that as well. What if the OA didn't claim Hedron? What would be the side effect, you think?
Yeah, well, so some of the daughter addresses of the OA claiming during the launch phase bonus was a really interesting move, because during the launch phase, the SA, the source address, which is the OA-like entity at Hedron, gets a copy of all of those bonuses up front. So it's also able to kind of control the system through a disproportionately large percentage of the supply as well. The OA if it wanted to have more of a strong control over the entire system, would have waited till after the launch phase bonus was over, staked a bunch of hex for it could just take most of it for a day, and then it would get trillions and trillions of the Hedron. And technically, it could still do that, but the fact that it did it before the launch day was an interesting move. And during that time where the OA was claiming its bonuses and minting some of it, there was some communication between the SA and the OA through the proof of benevolence function that was built into the system. So certain amounts of Hedron was burned by the SA through cryptographic cryptic messaging of like the numbers, and they like meant something, certain things. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was essentially the wallets communicating with each other, and the OA kind of give it like a nod and a wink, like I like what you were doing.
Yeah, interesting.
I would have to look up exactly what that was. So if anybody in the community wants to dig that stuff up again, but I remember that happening. It was pretty cool to watch as it was happening. Let me think. There was something else I wanted to say. The OA like entity also is really unique to HEX because of its staking feature, and the amount of HEX that can be distributed to the stakers is a function of the amount of HEX that exists because it's inflation. And so the OA controlling a large supply of it liquid and not staking it is actually what allows for some of the high APYs that we get to experience, because there's so many coins that aren't being staked that still exist that aren't hurting the price, yet the value is being transferred to the stakers because it's liquid. And so in a token that doesn't have an inflationary mechanism like HEX, where the value is being transferred from non-stakers to stakers, an OA like entity would, and actually this is kind of to what Hedron is, really only protects price and or provides liquidity, but doesn't necessarily have that extra value transfer that HEX does.
Yeah, I just think that, so just if the OA had claimed differently, it would have heavily inflated. It could have heavily inflated the Hedron, right? That's the big deal that it didn't happen. They was thoughtful enough to not do it in a way that would make everyone's Hedron worth a lot less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And here's something that somebody posted. I'll read it off because I liked it a lot, and I pinned this in my message from this guy Cycle Watcher. He's pretty active in the Hedron community.
Okay.
And I'll just read it off verbatim. If the OA allows Hedron to run, it will give him another token to ratio pump HEX. The more tokens with strong liquidity pools he can develop, the more firepower he can use to pump HEX. Example, using liquidity from Pulse, PLSX, and Hedron pools to pump HEX. The OA is inclined to pump HEX first above other Richard Heart tokens, as he said this many times on stream. Plus, the newer coins will take time to be distributed to the public and set a chart in motion. In summary, the OA would absorb max Hedron supply from weak holders to strong long-term holders, pump the price 100x, then use that high-valued Hedron price to ratio pump HEX. So there's some extra like games the OA can play by utilizing these systems that are building on top of HEX and providing value to the community to create a feedback loop that in turn continues to pump HEX.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. What do you think the OA wants to do? Do you think every move they take, they're thinking about it? Every move they make as far as affecting community projects is to turn around and pump HEX. Is that your thesis?
Yeah, the OA's main function is to protect the HEX price and to protect the HEX ecosystem. And so whatever it needs to do that, it will do that. You know, you saw when Hedron was on its major pump, the OA put up a bunch of liquidity because people were starting to sell HEX to get Hedron, kind of FOMOing into that massive pump that was happening. And so it kind of tried to slow things down because the HEX chart was starting to bleed versus the Hedron chart, and it didn't like that. And that liquidity wall still exists. I don't remember what it's at. I think it's like 7 to 10x away, and it'll continue to oscillate as the HEX price moves up. It'll be more X's away as well. But yeah, like the OA has taken actions to protect the HEX price, even relative to these new projects that are being built on top of it, and that Richard Heart that is even publicly already given as much of a nod of approval as he can, both to Hedron and Maxi. But yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like a message to anyone who wants to get the attention of the OA in a good way.
Oh yeah.
Build a good project.
Put this comment up by Cinery. I think this is Alex's name. This is Alex from Hedron. It's like we'll also consider the OA can make everyone else ratio pump hex with Hedron if the Hedron ARB price is ever met. Recycle borrowing until no more ARB. Yep. There's a lot of cool things that go into the game theory behind the advances in regards to arbitrage opportunity. Yeah. But I'll keep quiet. But yeah. Go in the Hedron chat. Yeah. Synergy, that's what it is. Yeah, go in the Hedron chat. If you have any questions about like this, like the supply stuff, they're very open community, and Alex is in there a lot, answering questions, and he's very accommodating and walks people through things. Like it's a pretty nice, cool niche community within the Hex ecosystem.
It is really one of those. I mean, I've just had a few interactions with folks, and yeah, it's just a nice, pleasant place. It's not a lot of nonsense. I appreciate the sub communities, the little tribes within the Reach Your Heart ecosystem that are just these calm, cool, collective. Not a lot of drama, not a lot of nonsense. Just like, hey, we just want to get stuff done, and I like that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
What do you think about the liquidation auctions too? Like, what are there ways to get good deals there? Is there anything interesting going on? I know I've seen a bunch of stuff coming up in maybe the next few weeks that look pretty big shares, actually T shares, not just B shares, but there's some that convert to actual T shares. What do you think is going to happen there?
No, I'm really excited that the liquidation auctions have started and have gone up and running. We've been talking about this for months before the launch of Hedron, and then you still had to wait 90 days after the launch to even have the chance for it to occur. And I think what's happening now is really cool. With the price being so low, and these were conversations that we had early on in the Hedron chat, but I believe a lot of these stakes that are up are large whales just starting to get the auction house going. Like they're just getting the system ramped up, showing people that it works. So it's not fully organic. What's the word I'm looking for? Engagement. Though you could argue that, because the flip side of that is that it's kind of bullish that you have people who are willing to sacrifice some of their coins in order to advertise to the entire system that, hey, this works and looks what's happening, and entice people to start burning coins.
Are you talking about that $1 billion bid that David Feeder was talking about? It looked way too much. But my other thought was, is it way too much? Like, is it ever possible? Like, what would need to happen for that bid to be a good idea?
Yeah. So there's a couple ways you can look at that. One, through the dollar value of the Hedron price, and two, through the relative amount of Hedron it takes to be at a certain position in the system. So the dollar price one is really cool because actually the lower the Hedron price is, the more Hedron gets burnt. So like, $1,000 of Hedron with 6 zeros in front of the number is a lot more than $1,000 with only 5 zeros in front of it. And so since we're at kind of like the all-time lows right now, it takes a lot more Hedron to be able to get that same dollar value out of the auction as you would if you would go on the market to buy HEX. So that's also kind of a hidden burning mechanism within the system. And that's another way you can look at it. It's like, oh, I can get a bunch of Hedron pretty cheap, and I can start making these bids, and then maybe I can get a HEX stake for pretty cheap, depending on how much competition there is to get it. And it also entices large minters to like, hey, you can market dump it, or you could just burn it and then just automatically get your HEX this way. You don't have to, hurt your own bags to be able to get the thing that most of them are selling for anyways. Like most Hedron whales are HEX whales. They like HEX. They dump any free airdrops they get for HEX. So if they can just burn their coins, preserve some dollar value of their large bag that they have, and then still get the thing that they want, it's kind of a win-win. The other way to look at it is, and this is the way I'm looking at it, is your positionality within the Hedron system. So like 1 billion Hedron is like a turtle position. 10 is a squid, 10 billion is a no 1 billion is a squid, 1 billion is a squid, and then 10 billion is a dolphin, and it's a factor of 10, just like with the shares. And so for me, when I think about the difficulty factor, the difficulty it is to obtain these coins, just in respect to obtaining them natively via hex staking, billions of a couple hundred B shares is not worth billions of Hedron or a squid position in my mind, because I know how difficult it is to obtain these things. I know how difficult it was for these things to be minted, and so I value these coins a lot more than its current dollar value on the market. And so these are the two different mindsets you can have when you're going into this option. Do you want arbitrage now in the forms of dollars, or do you value the Hedron that you have more or less than the amount it takes to get that many shares? Because when you burn this Hedron and you get that stake, obviously this will depend on the days mintable already, but that first stake that was like 700 B shares, and I'm pretty sure it had the 10x bonus on top of it too, went for like 2 billion and like 100 Hedron. It will never be able to mint that many Hedron at the end of its stake. Like, it's just not going to happen mathematically. And so you lost your position in the Hedron system to get 700 B shares. Is that worth it to you? Some people might be, yes. Like, oh, it's a perpetual dump token. After these coins, I don't want them. Give me something of real value. Me personally, no. It might take a while for me to even be enticed to go on the liquidation auction. And I know this is kind of contrarian, because a lot of people, like even like David Feeder, pro and Blue Bomb, a lot of pro Hedron people are very excited about getting cheap hex off the liquidation market. My perspective, I might not be participating that much because I really value my Hedron, and I don't know if it's worth burning it for hex. I might let other people burn their stuff because they may not value it as much, or they really want those hex stakes. But for me, I'm going to capture the value that's as a result of people burning their tokens, not necessarily its direct redeemability from these liquidations.
Interesting. So liquidation auctions are basically where you can use Hedron to buy B shares and T shares. But if you think that T shares are going to be super rare in the future, is that what you're talking about? The decision you're going to have to make? Do you think how valuable? How do you value your T shares and B shares versus your Hedron? That's the decision basically. Yep,
that's exactly it.
But is there a way where, for example, that 2 billion bid that won, if those T shares in the future, like what price would they have to be for that bid to look smart in the future? Would it be like crazy big? Like would it have to be, just this insane price and there's just no T shares left, or what?
Well, so that would depend on the ratio between the hex price and the Hedron price. So if they stay proportional to where they are now, whatever delta there was in price that happened at that moment in time will stay consistent as the prices move, right? So it gets harder and harder to obtain that amount of T shares over time, but it also gets harder and harder to obtain that Hedron over time. So as long as that difficulty factor in regards to obtaining Hedron off the market versus obtaining those B shares off the market, if those move proportionally to each other over time, whatever the difference in the value is that happened today is going to be the same in the future. Now, the question is one going to move disproportionately to the other at any point in time? Yeah, could they diverge? And so, well, we don't know. We can just speculate on that based on theory. Me personally, I think 2 billion Hedron is overpriced. Not necessarily in dollar value. I think it worked out to be maybe like $100 or $200 overpriced in terms of what was burnt. But I think the Hedron price is going to move disproportionately to the hex price over time. That's my personal opinion, and it's subject to change, but that's based on my understanding of the system. That's what I think is going to happen.
And does that correlate back with the projects, looking for that 10,000x, or just thinking that Hedron will outperform Hex in the future? That's what it comes down to.
Yep. I think it has the potential to do that 10,000x. For sure. I mean, in my opinion, if you're bullish on the share system, you're kind of bullish on Hedron indirectly. And the share system is where the value in HEX really lies. And the share system runs away in price more than the HEX does, the HEX price does, simply because it's a function of both the HEX price and the price of HEX per T-share.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I just want to, I really like getting through the details and laying it out, because I know a lot of people are listening and trying to figure this stuff out too. But no, it's a great explanation.
And you know, I go off on all the stuff, and I usually give pretty bullish perspectives on the thing. But it's okay to have a different opinion than this. We all have different sensibilities, different theories of value, different things that we're attracted to when it comes to investing. So like, just because I really like this thing doesn't necessarily mean you have to also like it. Like that's okay. It's not really that big of a deal.
Sure. No, it's no, we just like to hear the details for sure. Mm-hmm. Say hi to the chat real quick. I just got a couple other things to cover, and then we'll let Sloth go. I know he's tired, but say hi to Jerry, Steve are here. Hello, all are awesome. T-Bird, Matt S. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not a school cat. Yep. It's a regular cat, not a school cat. It's a joke from the other day. Synergy, yeah, appreciate everyone showing up. You all, I know there's a lot more people that aren't commenting but are listening in. I think they're just not they're not commenting because they're so intrigued by your
they're so engaged. They're so engaged.
Hey, literally, there's some streams I'm watching. I'm like, I don't even comment because I'm just listening. I'm just like listening so well. So we'll talk about Maxi for a second too. So do you think, or I guess should Maxi always be within 1.5, 1.6, 2x of HEX? Or if not, because I know a lot of people, that's kind of their theory, it should be around 1.6. I've heard before, for example, maybe 2x. But if not, why would you think it'd be worth more than that?
Yeah, so I've given a little bit of thought to this too, and so you have a couple ways of evaluating potential over/undervaluation of the premium that Maxi has to HEX. I think everybody agrees that it should have some kind of premium from a baseline. The question is where it is. And so the first way to do it, I think, is to calculate the accrued amount of interest that the Maxi stake has collected or been accredited. And then and Hedron kind of throws a little bit of a wrench in this. But I think the way to do it is to take the amount of HEX that was accrued, and then take the amount of Hedron that was accrued, and then just swap that into how much HEX it would be. Like Hedron number of tokens times the dollar value, and then just like divide that by the HEX price. That's how much HEX that amount of Hedron accumulated would be worth, because we want this ratio to be in terms of HEX. Add those two values of HEX together, and then take that, add it to the total amount that the stake was made by, and then divide it by the total amount the stake was made by. And that would be what the premium, the baseline premium of the interest accrued by the stake has been made. And that's at least the minimum in terms of the fundamental value of the main stake should be. And I don't know what it is. I ran those numbers not too long ago, and I got like 5%. It should be at like a 5% premium. But then I did some other looking around, and it was like 2%. I have to get the numbers right, but it was less than 10. The numbers that I ran, it was less than 10. But this is so by that metric, it's overvalued. All right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to remember that the premium is a function of the speculation of what will be accrued in the future. So people are anticipating, or the market is pricing in the interest that they know will be accrued, because HEX is, the most guaranteed interest that you could ever accrue. Like, we know more HEX is going to be accrued, more HEX and Hedron are going to be accrued by this stake over time. So we know that the premium is naturally going to go up. That native premium that I'm talking about is naturally going up. So people are probably pricing that in. The market is pricing that in because it'll eventually get to that point. Like, if you look at the max stake lengths by on like that max stake bot. It projects into the future based on the current share rate, how much hex that they would get. And that's like 5 to 7x the amount of hex that they would get from that max stake link, something along those, something in there, whatever it is, say 5x just for the sake of argument. Then what that means is the max premium that a maxi should have, if that multiple holds true, is 5, because at the end of that stake you would get 5 hex for every one that you put in, right? So people are kind of leading into that max cap premium where it's going to be at, because if you could get it at that base rate, well, you know tomorrow it's going to be slightly more, so you might as well buy it. So where that premium actually lies seems to be a function of the speculation on where the premium is going to be in the future, maybe like 2 to 3 years out, on top of the actual interest accrued. Where that should be, I don't know. I think that's just left to the market to decide. Me personally, I think it's overvalued. I would not want to buy it at this current premium rate, and I could be wrong about that. Like I've just accepted that I might be wrong, and I'm going to be looking for large retracements in that premium to be dollar cost averaging into that in the future. Like my eyes will always be on it because I really love Maxi, but right now, excuse me, I'm just accumulating. I am accumulating liquid hex. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And so Team, the new Maximus project.
Yeah, I haven't got a chance to look at the entirety of that spaces yet. Could you describe to me kind of what's going to happen with that?
Oh, I was hoping you could tell me. I mean, I listened to a little bit on yeah. I just listened to some commentary on Jim Rat's stream, and I was going to listen. I still haven't listened to the stream that Dipcatcher did. Sorry, Dipcatcher, I haven't got to it yet. But no, it seems like when I interviewed Dipcatcher a few weeks ago, he alluded to there would be some new tokens, some new ways that they have thought of to monetize some of this stuff, and different supplementals in that. And what I know so far about Team is you will need Maxi to participate in, I think, Hex in some way. I can't remember. You may need Maxi and Hex to participate in it. But yeah, there's a stream I need to watch on that to learn more about it. But hey, interesting stuff coming out.
I can elucidate one thing that I'm pretty sure will be a mechanic behind it. First, sure. Jawa, what's up? It's good to see you in the house. But he gets a little mad when we don't pay attention to the chat, so I got to make sure I say hi to Jawa. But
yes. But I was going to go through it, but I want to keep the question there. But I'll put it up there for a sec.
But in a previous stream by Dipcatcher that I did watch, and I really like this mechanic that he laid out, is that what happens when Maxi is burned, right? So it seems that when the stake is over, the way that the contract calculates how much Maxi how much hex and Hedron each Maxi is entitled to is it's a function of the supply of the coin at the end of the stake. And it might be updating over time. But what that means is that any Maxi that is burned today, and not sent to the contract address, but like burn through the burn function that's on Etherscan, that decreases the supply of Maxi, which increases the proportion all the other existing Maxi has, increases the entitlement of each Maxi relative to the end stake at the very end. So by burning Maxi, what you're doing is essentially giving an airdrop to every other Maxi holder that exists. And Dipcatcher talked about this, and he's essentially going to use this mechanism. I'm basically 100% sure he's going to use this mechanism to burn. When it comes to teams, I'm sure you'll burn Maxi to be able to probably get this new token called Team or whatever it is. And what that's going to do is increase the value of Maxi. So this is going to add to the premium already, because now you have, in addition to buying it because you can get more hex in 15 years, now you have the ability to get it because there's going to be some other incentive to burn it in the future. So there's going to be this weird push and pull, this kind of equilibrium that's going to be playing out where people are buying the Maxi token in order to burn it. To get this new thing, but also on the flip side of that, everybody who does not burn it is accruing value from that thing that's being burned. It's like a win-win situation. And it's like, where do you want to be positioned on this whole kind of thing? It's really well thought out. And when Dipcatcher said that, like, it immediately clicked in my mind. I'm like, this is good stuff. Because everybody wins, whether you participate or not, you win, which is great. And Staked Wealth, thank you. Dental school is going all right, man. Keeps me busy, but I always have time to hang out with my buds here on stream. And I'll make one more comment on that. That's also a mechanism that can be used with that charity idea that I had, right? So like the once the max stake length occurs, the charity then can create incentives for them to burn that token. And if the charity owns a large percentage of that token, then they just accrued a bigger proportion of that end stake at the end. So like you could say like burn like 5 of your tokens and you get like, I don't know, an NFT that gets you exclusive access to future fundraising dinners, like something like that. So like this is just an inherent feature of the system that I didn't even realize before he pointed it out, that also adds another level of like game mechanics and game theory to the whole system.
Dude, that's so cool. I mean, you just see all these different creative ways to do fundamentals, and it's just this like I don't know, it's like this bouncing ideals around in your brain until you get something that's like, oh my gosh, that's really cool. That's very interesting. That is something people are going to grok and really like, and once they understand it, they're going to buy into it, and it's so cool. There's so many good ideas going on in this ecosystem. I had a question I want to get to through back to Hedron just for a second. Where can I spot HEX and Hedron sell and buy walls?
I'm pretty sure Uniswap liquidity pools, like just look up the USDC pairs. I don't have the link or anything. I haven't looked at it personally in a while, but like go through those liquidity pools for like the Hedron and HEX ones, and you'll see it somewhere on there. And if you just go to like the Hedron Telegram chat, just like post that question, I'm sure someone will drop you a link.
Gotcha. Awesome.
But yeah, what about you, man? What are you excited about and all that's going on right now? What's been capturing your shiny object syndrome?
Oh, I think I tweeted earlier the documentary, and I said this maybe not too long ago, either at a meetup or when I was on stream with Brand, but I think that's going to double the community. I think whether Pulse is launched or not, I think it's going to. I mean, maybe not the first week or something, but I think that will be the catalyst. Yeah, for maybe 6 months from now in 2023, if the documentary launches, in the fall, for example, I think maybe mid 2023. I don't know how many community members we have, or heck, I don't know if anyone have a count of this. That would be. I guess you could count up the Telegram room channel numbers or something like that, but. Whatever the count is,
stakers and holders.
Yeah, stakers and holders. Yeah, you could use that metric as well. So whatever it is, whatever metric you look at, I think there is a big possibility it could double or at least go up 50%. I just think that once they see Richard, so there's two things when people will get into crypto, into a project. They either like the project or they like the founder. I mean, that's usually how they get onboarded. So a lot of people who like the product don't have to worry about that. People are going to keep coming across HEX. They're going to keep coming across PulseChain. They're going to read about it. They're going to see about it. They're going to see their friends in it. They're going to get into it that way. But the people who hate Richard or don't know Richard or misunderstand Richard or whatever it is, once they see this document, or people who've never even heard of Richard, once they see this documentary, and I'm really hoping distribution channel is fantastic. It doesn't have to be Netflix. That'd be great. But if it's just something where people can get to it, and we can shield the shit out of the link and just get it out there, documentary will show him from the ground up, his humble beginnings to his outrage marketing, and everything you see in between. If you don't think that's a good story, that's on you. And if you can't buy into something this guy is selling after you see this documentary, I don't know what to tell you. Like you're just going to stay in Bitcoin. And that's cool. You can stay into something that's stable. It'll keep gaining over time, blah, blah, blah. You already got your own community. You can't leave for whatever reason. You're too invested. You don't want to bother with it. That's cool too. But if you're new to crypto and you see what Richard Heart's all about, I can't help but think you are going to be in, you're going to be sold, and you're going to tell everybody else about it too. And that's how we grow. So that's what I'm most excited about at this moment.
Yeah, dude, I can't wait for the documentary to come out. It's gonna be fun to watch. I'll have like a viewing party with all my onboards at my school and we'll all watch it together. That's going to be fun. Although part of me is considering maybe I should just watch it one time on my own really quickly, just to make sure it's all like it's not a hit piece. Like I'm like 98, 99% sure it's not, but just in case I don't make an idiot out of myself, I bring out half my class to come watch this movie with me, and it's just like Hex is horrible. I don't think it's going to be that, but like that'd be kind of ironically funny if that happened.
I that would be, but I think, hey, you got to roll the dice. I mean, that would be that would be weirdly weird. I don't know what that would be about, but hey, if it happens, it happens. So we'll take it. Okay, want to talk about one more thing. I know you're about to pass out. We're going to get through this together. Thanks again for hanging in there. I just had one more question, or did I have one more? Oh yeah, I do. Okay, so yes, we talked about this, or I guess, or we sort of conversed about it earlier in one way or another. But what are the best pairs, PulseChain? So what are the best pairs you think would be worth the most and worth the least on PulseChain? Like, what is the case for certain coins being worth a lot and then certain coins being worth nothing?
Okay, yeah, I got you. Oh yeah, I remember this question. Okay, so I'll go through a couple scenarios to kind of outline my thinking on this because it's variable depending on the type of token and the utility that it has, as well as how it's performing right now. So let's start with the first scenario of a coin that is struggling on Ethereum that would probably not do well on PulseChain. And the example I'm going to give is Celsius. So Celsius, their kind of economic model is that the Cell token is essentially a endpoint of value accrual for the people who stake on their platform if they earn and sell. So like they take their yield and the yield that they would be getting of like Bitcoin, if they choose to earn and sell, they would take that Bitcoin, buy, sell off the market, and then you get a higher APR. You get a higher APR if you earn and sell that way. And so all of that yield would find its an endpoint in the sell price, and the price would go up. Well, through a lot of factors that we don't have to get into now, Celsius as a company and the Cell as ERC20 is having a lot of trouble. So they have a lot of work to do to get both their company back up and going and get investors back in, as well as getting more people on the platform. And they have a lot of work to do in regards to the design of their token. And that's just on the Ethereum side.
Richard is very unhappy with them.
Yeah. He's been pretty outspoken against them, especially, not your keys, not your crypto principle. It kind of violates that. That's a whole different discussion. But the reality is Celsius as a token and as a company is struggling right now to survive. And so because of that, because they have so much work that needs to be funneled into one token, like if it gets split into two, like I just don't see it. Like they're already kind of failing on one side. I don't see that second one having any kind of value, and they need to really focus on the thing that already exists before that token goes over. So that's one example of a type of token that would probably not accrue or hold any value on the other side. Now let's take another example. Let's take an example of a coin that I actually like that's doing well on Ethereum right now, and that's Illuvium. So Illuvium is the first attempting to be the first AAA blockchain game where like the assets on the game are NFTs and you can trade them, lands or NFTs, etc., like that whole stuff. The game isn't out yet. They have their first land sale on June 2nd in like 2 days. The game's looking great. They have a solid community. Progress is being made. The token has had good price appreciation. It's doing well on Ethereum, but its utility is based on the Ethereum network in that the game is probably not going to be on PulseChain. So the token is a governance token that has the ability to earn yield both through staking it as well as something called revenue distributions. So a percentage of the income, or a large percentage of the income that's generated from the game, goes directly into buying the Illuvium token and distributing it to the stakers, which I think is a really cool model. However, when it gets copied over, because the game exists on Ethereum, runs on immutable X, and is not built on the PulseChain, none of that value being funneled into the ERC20 is going to reach the PRC20. So here you have a situation where there's an ERC20 that has signs of success, is currently doing well and growing, yet because of its fundamental utility, being a game that exists on top of Ethereum, technically on immutable X, which is built on top of Ethereum, that doesn't translate over to PulseChain unless they start building on PulseChain and give it utility. Okay, so that's another situation where something may not accrue value because their utility doesn't translate over to a system state copy. Now, there's another one, and this falls into the category of DeFi, protocols that have been hindered by the Ethereum gas fees. So like Aave, any kind of staking protocol, Liquidity. Now, for some of these protocols I listed, we have forks that have already been marketing to the HEX community, and their PRC20 copy will probably not survive because somebody is basically beating them to market.
Liquid loans being Liquidity.
Liquid
right?
loans, fiat. Liquid loans is Liquidity, and then fiat is Aave. But the principle still stands for anything that anybody may be in specifically. So you have projects that fundamentally are good, but died on Ethereum because the gas fees killed them. You can't develop, people can't participate. Like if you get $20 of yield, but it takes $100 to pull it out, like what's the point? Right? Like this happens. And a lot of innovation has been halted and died because of those gas fees. That's a situation where something that has died on Ethereum may actually flourish on PulseChain because of the gas fee factor. Okay, so that's all of that on the Ethereum, and that's kind of like plus minus plus kind of thing. Now there's something a neutral coin, a coin that is almost like a 50-50 flip and or may see success on both chains. And the example I use for that is Shiba Inu. So Shiba Inu, meme coin, it has some staking features on it, but the marketing towards the Shiba Inu community has actually worked, where I know that people in their community are aware of PulseChain and are interested in their free copy. So some of them, because it's a meme coin and because it has a pretty fervent community and the marketing towards them has worked, there's a chance that even though it doesn't have any like fundamental utility behind it and it's just purely social consensus and a function of supply and demand for the price, it may retain some value because marketing towards them has worked and they're interested in free coins. So like, who knows about that? Now we move to the other side, another set of coins, and this is the Richard Heart ecosystem coins. And the first one is HEX. And the thing that HEX has going for it is that the creator of PulseChain is the same person who created HEX. So like automatically, de facto, it's going to succeed. Like it's Richard Heart's coin. It's going to be PHEX is going to be marketed as HEX, and then EHEX is like the cousin, not the other way around. So like boom, like it's done. It's going to succeed. And then you have the derivative products that are built on top of that. So if their value proposition is tied to HEX, HEX is going to succeed. You can therefore conclude that those things will also succeed too. So if anybody's looking for coins that was going to maintain value across the fork for something that's going to be copied over, the best bet is start with the foundation is HEX, then the derivative products, and then after that, it's just pure speculation based on what you like. And thank you, Jawa. I appreciate that compliment. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
I think it's going to be so interesting when it comes out to see. I think I agree with you on Celsius and the sheep community. They are fervent. That is a good way to describe them. They got some spunk in a lot of ways. So I think they're going to continue to spread throughout whatever network is coming, PulseChain. Otherwise, if there's going to be Shiba on them, those people seem like they're seeking out price performance. They like that kind of stuff, which is maybe some parallels to the X community on that too. It's going to be crazy. I think
it's going to be a lot of fun, dude. Oh my god, I can't wait. Like once the fork happens and like everything exists, we have all the charts and like it's just absolute madness for those first couple days and weeks. Like I'm going to have so much fun, even if I don't do anything. Just watching it and like being part of that history is going to be just a ton of fun.
Just imagine once we get a fork date, once things actually start rolling, once what Richard's not saying, there's more stuff to fix, and he's like, really prepping to start announcing things. I mean, there's going to be the pre-bridge with ratio trading. There's going to be all the projects they're scrambling to see, and people scrambling to see if their coin is going to work or not, and how well. And like you said, looking at all the data to try to figure out like what moves they should make. Like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people are going to have their consciousness occupied by PulseChain in one way or another this year, and probably within a few weeks period. The most concentrated amount of brain power trying to figure out how they can make money on these projects. I think, money can be a motivator for good and evil, but hey, I like capitalism as a libertarian, a free market capitalist, as a stake wealth likes to say too. Man, if there's all these things in the world you can do, if you want to play games, if you want to, whatever, work out, do whatever you want to do. But if you want to make money and that encourages you and influences you and motivates you to go do all these brain power spending games, and you get to meet people and build a community and get rich in the process, show me something better. This shit is awesome. Mm-hmm. So yeah. I'm in. That's why I'm in. That's why I'm in this community. That's why I've been in it for 5 years now. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, people like crazy. You make it all worth it, man. Like you hitting all these, you're hitting a different gear with this knowledge, and people want that. They want to hear these conversations. They like you are truly an asset to the community. I agree with y'all completely.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
That's why I like to have these conversations. I like to bring.
Hell yeah, dude.
This type of content, you're killing it. I just tweeted. Yeah, man. I said, Sloth's killing
it. Hey, you're doing a great job too, man. You're getting some heavy hitters in the community on stream, asking them awesome questions, getting good conversations, and then what's the word I'm looking for? Penetrating through just like the crypto stuff, because I know you have a passion for self-help, motivation, like how habits are formed, the psychology behind self-improvement, and so I appreciate you bringing that perspective to the community and kind of getting those conversations out to people who have built this community from the ground up, which you also have too, because you were part of there from day one as well.
Very passive in the beginning. I've left that behind me, and I'm excited for PulseCon. So you coming to PulseCon? I don't think we talked about that.
Dude, nah, it's right in the middle of my semester, man. I can't make one day I'll be able to come, but not at least for 2 years when it's like in September and October. It's like my busy time.
You can't be sick for like 1 day, fly to Vegas, and fly back the next one.
No, there will be a time when I make time, but now's not the time. When the opportunity presents itself, I will capitalize, but now is just not the time.
I think I'm going to try to stream from there too.
Yeah. Hell yeah, dude. Yeah, no, dude. So one day we're gonna meet in person one day. Don't worry, man. I got 15-year stakes. I'm not going anywhere, my dude.
Hey, join the club.
I know before you said you might want to talk about liquidity pairs, and I'm not going to be streaming myself for a while because I'm pretty swamped. So I figured now I might as well get this info out before I go, because it'll probably be a couple weeks before I hop on my channel and stream. So is that something you want to talk about?
Oh,
real quick. I can give you another 15-30 minutes easily.
If it's up to you, man. I'm here as long as you're breathing. Let's do it.
Yeah, man, let's do it. So tell me your thoughts, because this is an interesting conversation that's been happening in the community. I want to hear what you've been thinking about this question.
Sorry, what was the question?
I remember in that document you sent, you're talking about like liquidity pairings, liquidity pool pairings, right? Or was that, am I?
I was not talking about liquidity. I thought
you did.
I was talking about.
Was that the PulseChain
stuff?
Bridge?
Yeah, the bridge.
The bridge.
Which pairs
okay.
Bridge.
Never mind then. We save that conversation for another
What doc you talking about? You mean we prepare for these things? We prepare for who does it? Who prepares for streams to give people good content? Who does that? Jesus. But no, I mean, if you want to talk about it, I fully open.
Sure. Yeah, I'll give a little ramble about that, because I know this is a question that's been going around in the community, because people, because of the utility of HEX and its kind of coded delayed gratification, a lot of DeFi skills actually are kind of lacking in the HEX community, and a lot of people have been playing catch up on like learning these foundational principles behind liquidity providing. So a lot of people are like, when I listen to streams, a lot of people are like, what pairs are going to be good? What pairs are going to like be able to give us a lot of yield, but like not experience a lot of permanent loss? And that's been the big question around this discussion. It is the impermanent loss part. And so what is impermanent loss? And it's simply just the difference in dollar value that you would have gotten when you provided liquidity versus if you didn't provide liquidity. Because at the end of the day, when you provide liquidity, you always end up with more of the token that didn't appreciate as much or that went down more. Like that is the risk you take on when you provide liquidity to earn the high APRs that it generates. It's impermanent loss. So when we're thinking about pairs that we want to participate in, the goal is to, at least on a theoretical level, because what the market does is can vary wildly based on theory. But when going into it from a theoretical standpoint, what pairs may or may not experience the most and or least amount of impermanent loss. And if we can understand the mechanics on why a certain pair may or may not diverge in price drastically, we can make better educated guesses on where to put our economic mass to earn yield. Because really, that's why we're here. Token price appreciation is great, but we're in HEX a lot because of the yield, because we can earn yield in a trustless manner. And while the purity of the yield that we get through liquidity providing isn't as pure, isn't as robust, it is still a viable yield option, especially because the yield is liquid and you can use that to turn it into the illiquid form of yield through staking HEX. So couple coins like Jawa, like Hedron Pulse. So pairing things with Pulse may not be a terrible idea. Hedron, the value of that token is derived from its relation to the B share. So it's so that's where its theoretical value is tied to, and then Pulse is the entire system, the value of in the entire system. So the question you have to ask yourself is, do you think the value of the B share is going to move proportionally to the price of Pulse? And then you have to taper that with the how young Pulse is. So do you think, because Pulse is young and there's a lot of attention, is it going to move disproportionately to Hedron over time? Or do you think the rate of the B share, do you think that is going to pull the Hedron price with Pulse equivalent in an equivalent manner? One interesting one that a lot of people talk about is a cross-chain assets, so EHEX PHEX pairing. And the risk that comes into those kind of pairings has to do with if one chain is more or less successful than the other. So a lot of people want these like EHEX and PHEX to reach price parity, but there is a chance that one or the other coin may do better because people enjoy or people are using the Ethereum or PulseChain more. So like, for example, the argument for Pulse PHEX would be lower fees, more retail, easier to onboard. So you get more people participating. The pro for EHEX is people have been using it. People had to pay for it extensively. You get PHEX for free, so people don't value things they get for free as much. And people had to fight for their Ethereum HEX. Like people like you, people like DCC, all the OGs, they had to fight tooth and nail to keep that HEX because of all the FUD and the antagonism that went behind the system, went into HEX on the Ethereum side.
Staking certainly helps you with that.
Yeah, staking helps with that, but mentally it was tough to keep a hold of that entire time, right? So there's like a psychological value behind that token, and so that's kind of the questions you have to ask yourself if you're doing cross-chain assets. Is one going to do better than the other? We don't know. You have to see. The heuristic that I like to use for whether or not I'm going to do a liquidity pairing is, do I care on a 3 to 5 year time basis if I hold a little bit more of one coin over the other? If I like both coins and I am happy with holding more of the one that does less over time than the other, then to me, that's a good pairing. So for that example that I was talking about, EHEX, PHEX, if I understand the value of shares in the staking system, do I really care that much if I get a lot of more than one of the other? Because say I take a really big L. Say PHEX outperforms EHEX by a factor of 10, and then I get in before that ratio is set, and I just get a bunch more of EHEX. Well, the worst case scenario, I just leverage my time and then throw it out, and then it'll accrue over time. Like at least I'm getting T shares at the end of the day. Versus the classic scenario where you do coin of value and then shit coin number 42069. The shit coin just drops in value. You lose all of your pulse, and then you just have a bunch of this crap token. Yeah. So doing liquidity pools between tokens that are valuable to you long term, and you don't mind getting a little bit more of the lesser value one over time than the other one, that's a good one to prepare to consider liquidity providing for. And then the extra factor on top of that is the incentivization of these liquidity pools, because the people who decide that are the PLSX holders. We as the PLSX sacrifice set get to determine which pools get the most incentivization. And so we kind of get to dictate monetary policy and determine which pairs do we want, which coins do we want their liquidity and by extension their price to be bonded with each other. And so if we can kind of as a community choose these coins that are advantageous from an impermanent loss perspective and incentivize them, then that's just kind of a win-win for everybody. Because like for the EHEX PHEX thing, their prices are paired together, have a higher chance of reaching parity, and we get to earn yield in the form of the incentivization token on top of that, while experiencing less impermanent loss along the way.
So
those are my thoughts.
Could you recap with just which pairs would be best to be an LP for, and which ones you would probably not, you would avoid?
Yeah. So I think the way I'm looking at it, for two sides that I love holding either side, Hedron HEX, Maxi HEX, I think are solid plays, personally, based on the theory, because Maxi HEX is the easier one to conceptualize. So whenever the HEX token moves up in price, kind of by the nature of what Maxi is as a derivative product, it also goes up. Because if you can get more Max, if the premium, if it's a discount, not a premium, then like of course you're going to buy Max. You're going to buy at least up to where they're even, because at the end of the 15 years you're going to get more HEX out of that than the amount of Maxi that you have. So as HEX goes up, Maxi also goes up. Now that's pretty set in stone. Or go this way for up and to the right. Yeah, this way. But there is also a set amount of impermanent loss that's kind of baked into the system, because that Maximus stake is accruing interest over time. That premium is going to also continue to move over time, a little bit slowly, because the interest accrued kind of happens day by day and slowly, but they move proportionally as HEX moves. But Maxi, this top one, as they move proportionally, slowly starts moving away. Now, you could spin that as a good or bad thing. I spin it as a good thing, because if I want to get impermanent loss, I want to at least be able to conceptualize that rate of impermanent loss that's baked into the coins, which is why I think it's a pretty decent pair. Hedron Maxi, okay. That's an interesting, that's a really interesting one. I have to think about it more. But the Hedron Hex one actually has a similar breakdown as well, because the Hedron theoretically is tied to the B share, and then the B share goes up whenever HEX goes up in terms of price. It does that same thing, yet the B share gets more expensive because of the T share rate in terms of HEX over time. So again, it does that same thing where they can theoretically go up together, but then the Hedron is going to be the one, just like with Maxi, that's going to start moving away. And that one may be a little bit more violent, because the B share rate can get exponentially more expensive over time, because every single day it gets more expensive to get it in terms of HEX, and then the HEX price volatility is pretty high. I think that made sense. But and then that Hedron Maxi pair, that's a really interesting one, because both of them, like the way I described it, both of them move up with HEX, and then both the derivative product moves away. So it's like, do you think both of them will do that together? is what you're trying to which is what you're betting on. I actually have to think about that more. I mean, it's kind of obvious, but I haven't given it in-depth thought. I'd like to give that one more thought. But yeah.
Is there any pairs you would avoid being an LP for? Yeah.
I think outside of the EHEX PHEX one, and even that one I'm a little shaky on, like cross chain tokens, I'm personally gonna probably avoid, just because I have no idea of how to value those relative to each other. For HEX, like the best I can come up with is T-share arbitrage. So like I would go buy the one that I can get more T-shares on. Like that seems like the simple way to kind of evaluate which one I'm gonna buy. And then Matt S also has a decent point: avoid stablecoin pairs. So stablecoin liquidity providing is both from a token stablecoin and stablecoin perspective is pretty risky, and is more of a advanced play, because you have one coin that is just, it's stable, like it's going to be stable. So any kind of volatility that happens, you're just losing. If the price goes up, you're selling into the stablecoin. If the price goes down, you're buying into that token. So really the price has to actually move sideways in order for you to win and not experience impermanent loss. ECA in or out of a coin without experiencing like slippage or like paying gas fees, something like that. And and then the stablecoin to stablecoin pair. I mean, we just saw a prime example on the risk of that with Luna. Anybody who was pairing like USDC, USDT, while the peg was fine, like they both stayed the same and it's just a bunch of yield. Great. But USDT dropped, and then you just sold all of your valuable stable into that UST, which is now worth like 3 cents. Right. So like I am personally not interested in stablecoin to stablecoin liquidity pairings unless I have like so much confidence in those stablecoins that it's worth that risk.
And which one is the can't miss? Like which pair is the can't miss for liquidity providing as far as being able to make money off of? That you would think.
HEX Pulse, like PHEX Pulse. I think that's going to be a pretty solid one. I think that's going to be a very popular one to be incentivized. And I think it'll probably be one I participate into. Pulse PLSX is going to be an interesting one. I don't know if I'm going to provide liquidity with any of my PLSX, to be honest. I bet that one's going to have a high APR on it because you have that single-sided staking option, and it's deflationary because of the buy and burn, because there's a fixed supply. So it's like that's the one I'm probably the most bullish on just because of that feature. And so like you might be taking L's on a permanent loss in that one over time when you can just single-side stake it. But maybe like you could do is like if the APRs are really high and like you want to get in on it, like just take some of your yield from your other stuff and then buy PLSX and Pulse with it and then throw it in. Then you're playing with casino chips and getting that yield. Because it also falls into my heuristic where like, do I really care at the end of the day if I'm holding a little bit more Pulse or a little bit more PLSX? Not too much. I'm super happy with both of them.
That's a good point. Wow. All right, man. I think we're both about beat.
Let's talk your ear off there for a little bit.
No, I mean, it's like I'm listening. I'm looking at chat. I'm making notes and stuff too. So if my eyes wander, it's not because I'm not listening. I'm just like kind of multitasking too. But gosh, I'm glad we had this conversation.
Me too, man. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
I got to get you on my channel, Sam. This is my second time on yours. You only had you once. Got to do a one-on-one interview with you.
Yeah, actually, I guess we haven't did that. Okay. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, just let me know, man. It's been great. It's great having you chat, killing it today. Lots of people asking lots of good questions, participating. Love it. We're going to do some more interviews. I'm going to be on Sloth's channel at some point. He's going to get me on there. I'm going to talk some more on there. We're going to keep on keeping on the RHMax channel, trying to produce good content. Got a lot of stuff to clip. So many good nuggets in this one. I appreciate it, everyone. Have a good night. Have a good morning if you're just waking up. We'll say our goodbyes, and until next time, take it easy.
Thanks so much. Take it easy, everybody.